The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute professional academic, financial, or legal advice. Scholarship criteria, application deadlines, and government regulations regarding international study are subject to change without notice. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence, consult with official university financial aid offices, and verify all information with the relevant scholarship providers or government agencies before making any financial or educational commitments. Any examples provided are for illustrative purposes and do not represent a guarantee of funding or acceptance into any program. While most American students are currently staring at a mountain of student debt that averages over $37,000 per person, a small group of strategic undergraduates and graduates are living in Parisian lofts, historic Tokyo dormitories, and modern Berlin apartments entirely on someone else's dime. The common narrative in the United States is that studying abroad is a luxury reserved for the ultra-wealthy or those willing to take on massive private loans. This narrative is not just misleading. For many, it is factually incorrect. In reality, there are billions of dollars in international aid, federal grants, and private foundations specifically earmarked for American students, yet a staggering percentage of these funds go unclaimed every single year because the average student looks in the wrong places or gives up at the first sign of a complex application. We are currently seeing a historical trend where various foreign governments are actually increasing their subsidies for American students to foster diplomatic ties. Yet the application rates have not kept pace. If you believe that your GPA or your family's tax bracket is an absolute barrier to a global education, you are operating on outdated information. Today, we are breaking down the exact architecture of the high-level scholarship circuit. This is not a surface-level list of websites you could find with a 5-second search. This is a deep-dive masterclass designed to solve the primary problem facing every ambitious American student: the gap between global ambition and local financial reality. We are going to explore how to navigate the federal landscape of the Gilman and Boren Awards, how to leverage bilateral agreements between the US and foreign nations like Germany or Japan, and how to position your personal narrative so that foundations view you as a high-value investment rather than just another applicant. By the end of this series, you will understand the specific mechanisms used by successful candidates to secure 5- and 6-figure funding packages that cover tuition, airfare, housing, and even monthly stipends. To begin this journey, we have to address the foundational pillar of American study abroad funding, the Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship. This is perhaps the most significant tool for any student who receives a federal Pell Grant. Historical data suggests that the Gilman program provides over 3,000 awards of up to $5,000 each year. However, the mistake most students make is treating this like a standard essay competition. The Gilman is a program of the U.S. Department of State, and its goal is not just to help you travel. It is to diversify the pool of Americans who go abroad and to encourage students to study in non-traditional locations. Think about the strategic advantage here. If every other student in your university is applying to go to London or Florence, the competition for internal funding is a bloodbath. But if you are an American student looking at a STEM program in South Korea, or a public health initiative in Brazil, or a language immersion in Kazakhstan, you are suddenly a prime candidate for federal backing. The State Department wants to see Americans in places that are critical to U.S. national interests. When you draft your application, you must pivot away from what the trip does for you and focus entirely on what your presence in that country does for American diplomacy. For example, a case study of a successful Gilman scholar might involve a first-generation college student majoring in computer science who chose to study in Estonia, a global leader in cybersecurity. By framing their study abroad as a mission to bring back digital infrastructure knowledge to their local community in the U.S., they moved from a maybe to a priority candidate. Beyond federal grants, we must look at the massive, often overlooked world of foreign government subsidies. Consider the DAAD in Germany. The German Academic Exchange Service is one of the most well-funded organizations of its kind in the world. Germany has a long-standing policy of offering tuition-free or very low-cost education, even to international students. But the DAAD goes a step further by offering monthly stipends to qualified Americans. In many cases, these stipends can range from 800 to over 1,000 euros per month. This is a strategic move by the German government to attract talent. For an American student, this means the cost of living in a city like Leipzig or Bremen could actually be lower than the cost of staying on campus at a state school in the U.S. The requirement here is often a clear research goal or a specific reason why a German university is the only place you can achieve your academic objectives. Similarly, the MEXT scholarship in Japan is a full-ride opportunity that many Americans don't even realize exists. It covers tuition, travel, and provides a monthly allowance that can sustain a student throughout their entire degree or a year-long exchange. The barrier isn't just the difficulty of the application, it's the lack of awareness. Most students assume they need to be fluent in Japanese before they apply. In reality, many of these programs include a year of intensive language preparatory training as part of the scholarship package. This is a crucial distinction. You aren't being rewarded for what you already know. You are being funded for the potential of who you will become as a global liaison. Step 1 in this masterclass is the audit of eligibility. You cannot effectively hunt for scholarships if you do not understand your own data points. You need to categorize yourself across 4 metrics: identity, geography, discipline, and destination. Identity includes your background, such as being a first-generation student, a veteran, or a member of an underrepresented group in international education. Geography refers to your home state or your university's location, as many local community foundations have legacy funds for residents to travel. Discipline is your major. For instance, the Freeman Asia Scholarship is specifically for students with financial need who are heading to East or Southeast Asia. Finally, destination is the most powerful lever you can pull. Choosing a critical need language as defined by the U.S. government, such as Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, or Persian, opens doors to the Boren Awards, which can provide up to $25,000 for a full year of study. The Boren Award is a high-stakes example of the service requirement model. In exchange for significant funding, students commit to working in the federal government for at least 1 year after graduation. This is a career-launching move that provides both an education and a direct pipeline into the State Department, Defense Department, or intelligence community. This is why we don't use the word guaranteed. These are competitive, merit-based, and strategic investments made by the government. You are entering into a professional agreement. As we move deeper into this series, we will dissect the follow-on service project required by many of these awards. This is where most applications fail. A student might have a 4.0 GPA, but if their plan to give back to their home campus is simply to post photos on Instagram, they will be rejected. High-value committees want to see tangible impact. They want to see that you will host workshops, collaborate with your university's study abroad office, or write for local publications to inspire others. We are going to show you how to design a service project that looks like it was written by a professional consultant. This level of detail is what separates the dreamers from the travelers. We are moving beyond the why and into the how, starting with the precise way to map out your funding timeline 18 months before you ever step on a plane. The 18-month timeline is the silent killer of study abroad dreams for thousands of American students every single year. Most students start looking for money the same semester they want to leave, and by then the most lucrative national and international deadlines have already passed. If it is currently early 2026 and you are planning to be in Madrid or Seoul by the fall of 2027, you are exactly where you need to be. We are going to look at a case study of a student named Alex, a sophomore at a large state university in Ohio. Alex has a moderate GPA and works a part-time job to cover textbooks. Like many, Alex initially thought a scholarship search started with a Google search for free money for college. That is a tactical error. The first 6 months of your 18-month journey are dedicated to the institutional audit. Every major U.S. university has a department usually titled the Office of Education Abroad or the Global Engagement Center. These offices are staffed by professionals whose entire career is dedicated to moving students across borders. However, these advisors are often underutilized. Imagine if Alex walks into that office in month 18. Instead of asking what scholarships are available, Alex asks for the statistical data on which programs have the highest historical trends for institutional aid. Many universities have specific endowments left by alumni that are restricted to very narrow criteria. For example, there might be a fund specifically for engineering students from rural counties who want to study in Scandinavia. Because the criteria are so specific, these funds often have fewer applicants, significantly increasing the potential outcomes for someone like Alex. By month 12, the focus shifts from internal university funds to the massive federal and international players we touched on earlier. This is the period of the critical document gathering phase. You need to understand that these high-level committees are not just looking for a student, they are looking for a diplomat. When you apply for something like the Boren Awards or the Gilman Scholarship, your transcripts are only a small piece of the puzzle. You need letters of recommendation that speak to your adaptability and your cross-cultural competence. If Alex spends this 6-month block building a relationship with a professor who has international research experience, that letter of recommendation will carry 10 times the weight of a standard character reference. Now, let us look at the financial architecture of the destination itself. A common mistake is choosing a destination based on a vacation fantasy rather than a fiscal reality. In 2026, the cost of living in London or Paris is significantly higher than in many American cities. However, if you look at historical trends in Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, or even certain regions of South America, your US dollar or your scholarship stipend stretches twice as far. Case studies of students in Prague or Taipei show that they often live a higher quality of life on a smaller scholarship than their peers in London who are struggling to pay for basic groceries. This is a crucial part of your strategy, aligning your funding with a high-value, lower-cost region. As we reach the 6-month mark before departure, you enter the rapid-fire application window. This is where most students burn out because they treat every application as a unique, start-from-scratch project. The professionals use a modular application system. You should have a master document that contains your core narrative, your professional goals, and your service project outline. When Alex applies for 3 different scholarships, he isn't writing 3 different essays. He is adapting his core modules to fit the specific mission of each provider. This efficiency allows him to apply for 10 opportunities in the time it takes the average student to apply for 2. We also need to discuss the hidden layer of funding, the bilateral cultural exchange programs. Countries like France have the TAPIF program, and Spain has the North American Language and Culture Assistance Program. While these are often viewed as post-graduation options, there are similar undergraduate initiatives where foreign governments provide housing and stipends in exchange for cultural exchange work in local schools. Imagine if Alex secures a university grant for his tuition, and then layers a foreign government stipend on top for his living expenses. This is known as scholarship stacking, and it is the secret to returning from a year abroad with more money in your bank account than when you left. But there is a catch that no one talks about. Many of these scholarships are disbursed as reimbursements or arrive weeks after the semester starts. If you arrive in a foreign country without a liquidity plan, you will be in a high-risk financial situation regardless of how much money you were awarded on paper. Historical trends show that students who do not account for the gap between arrival and disbursement often end up relying on high-interest credit cards, which negates the benefit of the scholarship. You must build a bridge fund. We will look at how successful students use microgrants and local community crowdfunding to build that $3,000 buffer that ensures they never have to worry about a delayed wire transfer from a government agency. Consider the role of the personal statement in these high-stakes applications. In the US, we are taught to be humble. In the world of international scholarship committees, humility can be a liability if it obscures your impact. You are not asking for a favor, you are presenting a high-value proposal. When Alex writes his statement for a DAD grant to Germany, he doesn't say he wants to learn about German culture. He says he intends to analyze the German vocational education model to identify transferable strategies for the American manufacturing sector. He moves from a consumer of education to a producer of knowledge. This shift in positioning is what moves an application from the middle of the pile to the final interview stage. We have to address the reality of the 2026 academic landscape. Universities are increasingly looking for global citizenship as a metric for success. This means the competition is getting smarter. If you are relying on the same old tropes about finding yourself or seeing the world, your application will be discarded. You need to anchor your desire to study abroad in a specific, measurable professional outcome. If you are a nursing student, your study abroad in Costa Rica isn't about the beaches. It is about clinical rotations in a universal healthcare system and gaining the medical Spanish skills necessary to serve the growing Hispanic population in your home state of Ohio. The depth of this masterclass requires us to look at the granular details of the interview process for the elite awards like the Rhodes, Marshall, or Fulbright. Yes, these are traditionally for seniors or recent grads, but the preparation begins now. These committees will ask you about U.S. foreign policy, they will ask you about the political climate of your host country, and they will challenge your assumptions. If you haven't been reading international news outlets like the BBC or Al Jazeera, you will be caught off guard. Successful candidates often spend months in mock interview sessions, refining their ability to speak about complex global issues with nuance and authority. As you start to see the pieces of this puzzle come together, you realize that getting a study abroad scholarship isn't about luck. It is about an 18-month engineering project. You are building a case for your own value. But even with the perfect timeline and the perfect essay, There is one specific technical hurdle that disqualifies nearly 20% of otherwise qualified applicants before their essay is even read. It has nothing to do with their grades or their finances, and everything to do with a single checkbox on the application form that most people misunderstand. If you get this one technicality wrong, your entire 18-month plan could vanish in an instant. Understanding this technicality is the difference between an approval letter and a form rejection. In the next part, we are going to dive into the specific administrative traps that catch even the brightest students, and how you can navigate the complex web of visa requirements and credit transfers that scholarship providers use as a silent filter to see who is truly prepared for the rigors of international life. We will also reveal the exact script you can use when talking to your financial aid officer to uncover the hidden funds that aren't listed on the university website. The single checkbox that disqualifies nearly 20% of applicants is the academic credit equivalency verification. On many high-level scholarship applications, there is a technical question that asks if your home institution has already pre-approved the credits you will earn abroad. Many students, in their excitement to secure funding, check yes because they assume their university will naturally accept credits from a reputable foreign institution. However, if the scholarship committee contacts your registrar and finds no record of a preliminary credit evaluation, your application is flagged for being administratively incomplete. This is not just a clerical error. It is a signal to the committee that you have not done the foundational work required to ensure your study abroad period actually contributes to your degree progress. In the eyes of a donor, funding a student who might fall behind on their graduation timeline is a high-risk investment. Let us look at a case study involving Maria, a junior from Texas majoring in architecture. Maria applied for a prestigious regional scholarship to study urban planning in Seoul. She had a high GPA and a compelling essay, but she skipped the step of sitting down with her departmental advisor to map out how a Korean university's studio credits would translate to her American degree requirements. When the scholarship committee reached out to her university to verify her academic standing, her advisor could not confirm that the credits would transfer toward her major. Consequently, Maria's application was moved to the rejected pile despite her academic brilliance. To avoid this, you must initiate the credit transfer process before you even submit your scholarship application. You need a signed document from your academic dean or registrar stating that the courses you intend to take abroad are equivalent to specific courses in your degree plan. This proactive step transforms that checkbox from a trap into a competitive advantage. Beyond credit transfers, there is the administrative filter of the financial feasibility form. Most students treat the budget section of a scholarship application as a series of guesses. They look up the price of a flight and the average cost of a meal and plug in numbers. Professional-level applicants, however, treat this like a business proposal. Imagine if Maria had attached a verified budget sheet that included not just airfare and tuition, but also mandatory local health insurance, visa processing fees, and the currency fluctuation buffer. Scholarship committees are looking for students who understand the logistical reality of living in a foreign country. Historically, students who demonstrate a granular understanding of their anticipated expenses are viewed as more mature and less likely to encounter a financial crisis that forces them to return home early. This leads us to the most powerful, yet least utilized resource on your campus, the financial aid officer. Most students only visit this office when there is a problem with their FAFSA or a late fee on their account. You are going to go there with a very specific script to uncover what we call dormant funds. These are scholarship accounts that have been sitting idle because they have extremely narrow criteria or because the office has not promoted them recently. When you walk into that office, you do not ask for a list of scholarships. You use this specific approach. I am currently in the 18-month planning phase for a high-intensity study abroad program in a non-traditional location. I have already identified my federal and international targets, but I am here to inquire about institutional restricted funds. Specifically, I am looking for endowments where the donor specified interest in my major, my destination, or my demographic that have historically seen low application volume. This script works because it uses the language of the financial aid industry. By mentioning 18-month planning and restricted funds, you signal that you are a serious candidate. In many cases, these officers can see funds that are not listed on the public-facing university website. For instance, there might be a $2,000 grant from a donor who graduated in 1974 and wanted to support students going to Italy, but because the grant is small, the university does not advertise it heavily. For you, that $2,000 covers your round-trip flight and your first month of rent. Another critical administrative trap is the visa lead time. In 2026, visa processing times for many popular study abroad destinations have become increasingly volatile. If your scholarship is contingent upon your arrival by a specific date, and you have not accounted for the 12-week wait time for a student visa, your funding could be revoked. Case studies of American students headed to the Schengen area or Japan show that many wait until they have their scholarship letter to start the visa process. This is a mistake. You should have your passport and all preliminary background check documents ready months in advance. The scholarship committee wants to see that you are ready to hit the ground running the moment the funds are disbursed. We also need to discuss the cost of attendance adjustment, or the COA. This is a technical maneuver that can significantly increase the amount of federal aid you can carry abroad. Every university has a standard COA that determines your maximum financial aid package. However, if your study abroad program is more expensive than staying on campus, you can request a COA adjustment. This allows you to tap into higher levels of subsidized loans or institutional grants that would otherwise be capped. Maria, for example, found that her university's COA was $25,000, but her semester in Seoul, including airfare and specialized architecture materials, would cost $30,000. By filing for a COA adjustment, her university was able to release an additional $5,000 in aid that was previously inaccessible to her. This is not a gift. It is a strategic alignment of your existing financial aid with your new global reality. High-retention applicants also understand the power of the secondary narrative. While your primary scholarship essay focuses on your academic and professional goals, the administrative sections often leave room for a personal statement. This is where you address your resilience. Imagine if the committee sees two identical applicants. Both have high GPAs, both are going to Germany, and both have great recommendations. But one applicant has a detailed section on how they managed a part-time job while taking a full course load, demonstrating time management and fiscal responsibility. The other applicant leaves this section blank. Historically, the committee will choose the student who has demonstrated they can handle the stress of a challenging environment. This is the difference between being a good student on paper and being a reliable investment in practice. As we move through the administrative landscape, you must also be aware of the power of the local community. In the U.S., organizations like the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, and local heritage societies often have small, unadvertised pots of money for local students going abroad. These are not national competitions. They are community investments. If you can show a local Italian-American society that your study abroad in Rome will allow you to bring backstories and cultural insights to their local chapter, they are often more than willing to provide a $1,000 or $2,000 stipend. These small wins stack up. When you combine a local $500 grant, a $2,000 university endowment, and a $5,000 federal scholarship, you have created a $10,000 safety net before you even look at your own savings. However, even the most administratively perfect application can fall apart at the very last stage, the interview. Many students treat a scholarship interview like a casual conversation, but in the world of high-stakes international funding, it is a defense of your personal and professional mission. If you cannot explain with data and specific examples why your chosen destination is the only place in the world where you can achieve your goals, you will lose the funding to someone who can. The administrative preparation we have discussed is just the foundation. The real battle happens when you have to articulate your value in person or via video conference. This brings us to an open loop that most students ignore until it is too late. There is a specific way to use social media and digital presence that can either validate your application or destroy it. In an era where committee members will almost certainly look you up online, having a digital footprint that contradicts your scholarly narrative is a high-risk factor. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the digital audit and the personal brand strategy that will make you look like a future global leader before you even say a word in an interview. We will also cover the exact way to follow up with donors after your trip to ensure that you remain on their radar for future opportunities, including graduate school funding. The digital audit is a component of the scholarship application process that many American students overlook, yet in 2026, it has become a standard part of the vetting procedure for high-value awards. Imagine if a scholarship committee member for the Fulbright or a major corporate-sponsored grant types your name into a search engine. They are not just looking for red flags. They are looking for evidence of your commitment to the narrative you presented in your essay. If your application claims you are a serious student of international relations with a passion for Middle Eastern diplomacy, but your public digital footprint consists entirely of unrelated recreational content, there is a narrative mismatch. This discrepancy can lead to a lower score in the character and leadership categories. To avoid this, you must conduct a thorough digital cleanup and, more importantly, a digital build-up. Case studies of successful scholarship recipients in 2026 show a rising trend in what we call the professional portfolio effect. Take the example of Jordan, a senior from Michigan studying environmental science. Jordan wanted to secure a prestigious fellowship to study sustainable urban farming in the Netherlands. 6 months before the application deadline, Jordan began a digital audit. First, he set all purely personal social media accounts to the highest privacy settings. Then, he focused on building a public-facing LinkedIn profile and a simple professional website. On these platforms, he shared articles he had read about Dutch water management, posted short reflections on his local volunteer work at a community garden, and connected with professionals already working in the field he hoped to enter. When the scholarship committee inevitably searched for Jordan, they found a candidate whose digital presence acted as a 24/7 reinforcement of his application. He did not just tell them he was interested in sustainability. He showed them he was already an active participant in the global conversation. This process of digital alignment is not about being fake. It is about being intentional. You need to ensure that your LinkedIn headline is updated to reflect your status as a scholarship candidate and your specific academic goals. Use the featured section of your profile to highlight any research papers, projects, or relevant certifications you have earned. If you are applying for a language-intensive scholarship, consider posting a short video of yourself practicing the language or discussing why learning it is critical for your career. This level of preparation demonstrates a high degree of digital literacy and professional maturity, which are traits highly valued by committees looking to invest large sums of money in a single student. Moving beyond the digital audit, we must address the specific mechanics of the personal brand strategy during the interview stage. In high-stakes scholarship interviews, you are often facing a panel of experts, academics, and former recipients. They are trained to see through rehearsed answers. The goal of your personal brand strategy is to provide a cohesive thread that links your past experiences, your current studies, and your future potential. Imagine if the panel asks you why they should choose you over 100 other qualified applicants. A standard answer about working hard and wanting to see the world is a missed opportunity. A branded answer, however, connects your unique background to the mission of the scholarship. For instance, if you are a first-generation student from a rural background, your brand might be the bridge between local communities and global perspectives. You explain that your study abroad in Japan is not just for your own education, but to bring back specific technological insights that can help modernize small-scale manufacturing in your hometown. You become the candidate who represents a specific return on investment. Historically, committees are drawn to students who see themselves as part of a larger ecosystem. They want to fund the ripple effect, not just the individual. To execute this strategy, you need to develop 3 core pillars for your brand. Pillar 1 is your unique perspective. What do you see that others might miss? Pillar 2 is your specific expertise. What technical or academic skill do you bring to the table? Pillar 3 is your ultimate objective. How does this scholarship act as the essential catalyst for your career? By consistently referencing these 3 pillars in your essays and interviews, you create a memorable and persuasive profile. You are no longer just an applicant with a high GPA. You are the rural manufacturing specialist or the bilingual public health advocate. Once you have secured the funding and completed your time abroad, the work is not over. The follow-up strategy is what separates a one-time recipient from a lifelong scholar. Most students return from their trip, send a generic thank you email, and never speak to the donor or organization again. This is a massive waste of social capital. Professional scholars understand that the people who funded their undergraduate study are the same people who can provide recommendations for graduate school, introduce them to industry leaders, or even fund future research projects. The first step in a high-level follow-up is the impact report. Within 30 days of your return to the United States, you should provide your donors with a concise, professional summary of what their investment achieved. This is not a travelogue of the tourist sites you visited. It is a report on the academic milestones you reached, the cultural barriers you overcame, and the specific ways the experience has refined your career goals. Include data where possible. If you were studying language, mention your proficiency level increase based on standardized testing. If you were doing research, summarize your findings. Furthermore, you should maintain a regular cadence of communication. Imagine if 6 months after your return, you send a brief update to the scholarship committee about a project you are working on that was directly inspired by your time abroad. This keeps you on their radar in a non-intrusive professional way. Many organizations, such as the Gilman or Bourne programs, have extensive alumni networks. Engaging with these networks by attending webinars, volunteering as a mentor for new applicants, or writing for their alumni newsletter further solidifies your brand as a leader. In 2026, many graduate school fellowships specifically look for candidates who have a proven track record of being active, contributing alumni of previous programs. Let us look at a case study of a student named Sarah who studied in Jordan on a federal grant. Upon her return, she didn't just move on to her senior year. She organized a workshop at her university for other students interested in Middle Eastern studies, using the materials and experiences she gathered abroad. She sent photos and a short write-up of this workshop to her scholarship officers. When she later applied for a highly competitive graduate fellowship at a top-tier university, she was able to point to her work as a scholar leader. Her follow-up transformed a 6-month scholarship into a multi-year professional trajectory. This level of intentionality is what builds a global career. You are not just looking for a way to pay for a semester in Spain. You are looking for the entry point into a network of international professionals. Every document you submit, every digital post you make, and every follow-up email you send is a brick in the foundation of that career. The competition for these funds is significant, but when you approach it with this masterclass level of detail, your potential outcomes shift dramatically. You move from the realm of hoping for a chance to the realm of strategically positioning yourself as the most logical choice for the investment. But there is one more layer to this architecture that we have not yet touched on, and it is perhaps the most difficult to master. It involves the high-pressure environment of the live interview when a committee member asks a question designed to test your loyalty or your ethics regarding U.S. interests abroad. How you handle these specific, often controversial questions can make or break an application for the most prestigious federal awards. In the next part, we will break down the exact psychological framework you need to navigate these high-stakes questions without compromising your integrity or your chances of funding. We will also look at the specific travel hacks that allow you to stretch a $5,000 stipend into a $10,000 experience through strategic regional travel and local networking. The high-pressure interview stage is often where the most promising applications face their final test, particularly for federally funded programs like the Bourne Awards or the Gilman Scholarship. In these settings, you aren't just being interviewed by academics, you are often sitting across from former diplomats, intelligence community professionals, and high-level administrators who are tasked with ensuring that U.S. taxpayer dollars are being invested in individuals who can represent the United States with nuance and maturity. One of the most challenging aspects of these interviews involves questions that touch on sensitive geopolitical issues or your personal ethics regarding U.S. foreign policy. Imagine if a committee member asks you how you would respond if a student in your host country openly criticizes American interventionism or a specific U.S. policy. This is not a trap designed to see if you are a blind patriot, nor is it a prompt to join in the criticism. Instead, it is a test of your diplomatic temperament. Historically, the most successful candidates utilize a framework we call the informed observer approach. In this framework, you don't defend or attack. You demonstrate an ability to facilitate dialogue. A case study of a successful Bourne applicant in early 2026 involved a student named Marcus who was heading to Turkey. When asked a similar question, Marcus explained that his role was to listen and provide context on the diversity of American thought. He noted that the U.S. is not a monolith, and that his presence abroad was to represent the democratic value of open debate. This response demonstrated the exact kind of emotional intelligence and intellectual flexibility that federal agencies look for in future leaders. You must also be prepared for questions that test your loyalty to the program's mission. For example, if you are applying for a scholarship that has a service requirement like the Bourne, the committee might ask what you would do if you were offered a high-paying private sector job immediately after graduation that would prevent you from fulfilling your government service. The only correct way to handle this is to reaffirm your commitment to public service as your primary objective, not a secondary chore. Case studies show that panels are looking for a sense of duty. You should speak about the service requirement as a career-launching opportunity that aligns with your long-term goal of contributing to national security or international cooperation. Now, let us transition from the psychology of the interview to the practical reality of living on a scholarship stipend. One of the most effective ways to maximize your financial resources is through a strategy known as regional geo-arbitrage. While your scholarship amount might be fixed, its purchasing power is highly variable based on your physical location and your lifestyle choices. In 2026, We are seeing a significant trend where students awarded $5,000 stipends for a semester are able to stretch those funds to cover nearly double the value by making strategic decisions about where and how they travel. Consider the case study of Chloe, a student from Georgia who received a standard institutional grant for a semester in Budapest, Hungary. While many of her peers spent their weekends flying to high-cost cities like London, Paris, or Amsterdam, Chloe focused on regional travel within Central and Eastern Europe. Because the cost of transport, food, and lodging in places like Poland, Slovakia, and Romania is substantially lower than in Western Europe, she was able to travel every other weekend while staying well within her budget. By the end of the semester, Chloe had visited 8 different countries and engaged in deep cultural immersion, while her peers were dipping into their personal savings just to cover the cost of a single weekend in Switzerland. To achieve this level of fiscal efficiency, you must master the art of local networking before you even arrive. Most students rely on expensive student housing platforms or tourist-facing short-term rentals. A high-value strategy involves reaching out to the student unions or local university groups in your host city months in advance. Imagine if Chloe had used a local university forum to find a subsidized student dormitory or a shared apartment with local students rather than going through a third-party agency. This move alone could save a student between $300 and $600 per month. Over a 4-month semester, that is nearly $2,400 in savings, essentially doubling the discretionary income provided by a typical stipend. Furthermore, you should look for local networking opportunities that offer what we call functional subsidies. This includes joining local professional organizations, language exchange groups, or even hobbyist clubs. In many cultures, being a guest and a student opens doors to hospitality that isn't available to a standard tourist. Historically, students who engage deeply with local communities often find themselves invited to family dinners, local festivals, or even regional trips with their host country peers. These experiences are not only more authentic and educationally valuable, but they also significantly reduce the cost of living. You are moving from a consumer of the culture to a participant in the community. Another technical hack for stretching your stipend involves currency management. In 2026, the fluctuation between the US dollar and foreign currencies can be a significant risk factor. Successful students often use digital banking platforms that allow them to hold multiple currencies and lock in favorable exchange rates when the dollar is strong. If your scholarship is disbursed in a lump sum, you should be strategic about when you convert those funds. By monitoring historical trends and using basic financial tools, you can avoid losing 3 to 5% of your total funding to unnecessary bank fees and poor exchange rates. When it comes to daily expenses, the most successful scholarship students adopt the local lifestyle rather than trying to replicate an American one. This sounds simple, but it is the most common reason for financial strain. If you are in Tokyo, eating at American fast food chains or shopping at international grocery stores will drain your stipend in weeks. However, if you utilize the local convenience store culture, shop at neighborhood markets, and use student-discounted transit passes, your cost of living can be surprisingly manageable. In cities like Seoul or Taipei, the government often provides deeply discounted cards for students that cover both transport and small purchases at local vendors. Identifying these resources in week 1 is critical. We must also discuss the role of the scholarship-affiliated network in reducing costs. Many programs like the Fulbright or the DAAD have local chapters of alumni who live in the host country. These alumni are often willing to provide advice on the best places to find affordable housing, the most reliable local healthcare providers, and the hidden gems that aren't in the guidebooks. Reaching out to this network is a professional move that pays dividends. It shows that you are proactive and that you respect the institutional knowledge of those who came before you. As you build this safety net of local knowledge and fiscal strategy, you begin to realize that the scholarship isn't just a check. It is a license to explore. But there is a ceiling to how far a stipend can go if you don't have a plan for the most expensive part of any study abroad experience: the unplanned emergency. Whether it is a medical issue, a lost passport, or a sudden change in housing, these events can derail your finances instantly. In the next part of this series, we are going to look at the specific insurance and contingency planning that scholarship committees actually want to see in your application. We will also dive into the language secret, how even a basic proficiency in the local tongue can unlock thousands of dollars in additional grants that are reserved for bilingual students. We will show you exactly how to prove your language skills, even if you have never taken a formal class in that language. Language proficiency is often viewed by American students as a binary state. You either speak it or you do not. However, in the strategic landscape of scholarship acquisition in 2026, language is a spectrum that can be quantified to unlock significant financial resources. Even a basic, functional understanding of a host country's language can act as a force multiplier for your application. Many high-level grants, such as those provided by the French Embassy or the Italian Cultural Institute, have tiered funding structures. A student with zero language skills might qualify for a basic tuition waiver, whereas a student who can demonstrate level A2 or B1 proficiency on the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CFR, may be eligible for an additional living stipend. This is because scholarship committees view language skills as a primary indicator of cultural adaptability and a predictor of a lower risk of program withdrawal. Consider the case study of Tyler, a junior from California majoring in international business. Tyler wanted to study in Lyon, France. He had never taken a formal French class in college, but he had spent 6 months using self-paced digital apps and attending a weekly conversation table at a local library. Instead of leaving the language section of his scholarship application blank, Tyler took a proactive step to prove his skills. He utilized a certified online proctored exam, which provided him with a formal proficiency certificate for a fraction of the cost of a traditional university course. When he submitted his application for the Benjamin Franklin Travel Grant, he attached this certificate. Historically, committees see this as a sign of high initiative. Tyler was not just waiting to be taught. He was actively preparing himself for the environment. As a result, he was awarded an extra $1,500 specifically designated for students who could skip the introductory language orientation and move directly into elective courses. If you have never taken a formal class, you can still prove your proficiency through the portfolio method. This involves documenting your self-study journey. You can provide a log of hours spent in language exchange, a list of foreign language media you consume, or even a short video essay of yourself speaking the language. In 2026, many scholarship boards for non-traditional destinations, such as Indonesia or Vietnam, value this self-taught grit more than a transcript from a high school classroom. They are looking for the ability to learn in the field. By demonstrating that you have already built a foundation, you decrease the perceived cultural friction you will experience upon arrival, making you a safer and more attractive candidate for funding. Beyond language, we must address the critical component of contingency planning and insurance. This is the section of the application where most students lose points for lack of maturity. A scholarship committee is essentially a venture capital firm for students. They are investing in your successful completion of a program. If your application does not address what happens when things go wrong, you are signaling a lack of foresight. Imagine if a committee member asks how you would handle a sudden medical emergency in a country where you do not speak the language fluently. If your answer is that you will call your parents or figure it out when it happens, you have failed the test. Case studies of elite scholars show that they include a dedicated section on risk management in their personal statements or supplemental documents. You should research the specific health insurance requirements for your destination. Many American health plans do not provide adequate coverage for international medical evacuation or repatriation. Successful applicants identify a specific international provider, such as GeoBlue or SciSci, and include the cost of this premium in their budget proposal. This tells the committee that you are a professional who understands that a $5,000 medical bill could instantly end your study abroad experience. You are showing them that you have already built a firewall around their investment. This foresight extends to the concept of the Emergency Liquidity Fund. In 2026, global financial systems are highly integrated, but localized banking disruptions can still occur. A high-value student mentions in their financial plan that they maintain a separate, liquid emergency fund equivalent to 1 month of local living expenses. This demonstrates that you will not be knocking on the scholarship office's door for an emergency advance if your primary debit card is lost or stolen. It is this level of administrative independence that separates the top-tier candidates from the general pool. We also need to look at the hidden grants for specific disciplines that are often bundled with language or regional studies. For example, if you are a STEM student, there are organizations like the Gilman McCain Scholarship or the Goldwater Scholarship that have international components. Many students in the sciences assume that study abroad is only for humanities majors. This is a massive misconception. In fact, because STEM students study abroad at lower rates than their peers, there is often more funding available to them as organizations try to bridge this gap. Imagine a student named Samantha, a chemistry major who found a lab internship in Switzerland. Because she was a STEM student going to a high-research environment, she was able to tap into a niche grant from a private scientific foundation that had only 3 other applicants. She used her basic German skills to show she could navigate the lab environment, securing an $8,000 award that covered her entire living cost in one of the most expensive countries in the world. Step by step, your goal is to stack these advantages. You start with your core scholarship, you add a language proficiency stipend, you insulate your plan with a professional risk management strategy, and then you look for your disciplinary niche. This creates a multi-layered funding package. However, there is a technicality in the U.S. tax code that many students ignore until April of the following year. While many study abroad scholarships are tax-free when used for tuition and required books, any portion of the grant used for room and board may be considered taxable income by the IRS. Historical trends show that students who do not set aside a small percentage of their stipend for potential tax liabilities often face a financial shock during tax season. A professional-grade applicant mentions this awareness in their budget, further proving their fiscal literacy to the committee. As you refine your language skills and your risk management plan, you are becoming a candidate who is ready for any environment. But there is a psychological barrier that often prevents American students from even applying to the most lucrative programs. This is the phenomenon of the imposter filter. Many students look at the list of past winners for the Rhodes, the Marshall, or even the Gilman and see only students from Ivy League universities or those with perfect backgrounds. This creates a self-selection bias where high-potential students from community colleges or state schools do not even submit an application. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dismantle the imposter filter. We will look at the specific data that shows how scholarship committees are actively pivoting towards students with non-traditional backgrounds, and how you can use your unique life challenges as your strongest selling point. We will also reveal the exact way to leverage your university's alumni network to find mentors who have already won these awards and are willing to coach you through the process for free. There is a secret society of scholarship winners who want to help you, and we will show you how to find them. The Secret Society of Scholarship Winners is not a shadowy organization behind closed doors. It is a sprawling, underutilized network of alumni who are often contractually or emotionally obligated to give back to the programs that funded their own global journeys. Programs like the Fulbright, the Gilman, and the Bourne have formal alumni ambassador programs. In 2026, the trend in scholarship selection has shifted dramatically away from the polished, Ivy League archetype toward what committees call distance traveled. This metric measures how far a student has come based on their starting point. If you are a student at a community college or a first-generation college attendee at a state university, your distance traveled is often much greater than someone who has had every resource since birth. This is your greatest competitive advantage, yet it is the very thing that triggers the imposter filter. To dismantle this filter, you must first understand the data. Historical trends in federal scholarship awards show a concerted effort to diversify the geographic and institutional representation of American students abroad. Organizations are actively looking for applicants from the Midwest, the South, and rural areas, as well as students from minority-serving institutions and community colleges. They do not want 100 students from the same 3 elite universities. They want a mosaic of the American experience. Imagine a student named Brandon, attending a community college in rural Nebraska. Brandon assumes he has no chance at a national award because he is not at a Tier 1 research university. However, Brandon is exactly who the Gilman International Scholarship is looking for. By framing his background not as a deficit, but as a unique lens through which he will view his studies in South Africa, he moves to the top of the pile. The first step in leveraging the secret society is the alumni search. You are going to go to LinkedIn and use the advanced search filters. Type in the name of the scholarship you are targeting, for example, Bourne Fellow, and filter by your current university or your home state. You are looking for people who have already successfully navigated the path you are on. When you reach out, do not ask for money or a recommendation immediately. Use this specific outreach framework. I am a current student at your alma mater, and I am preparing an application for the scholarship you were awarded in the past. I have analyzed your public profile, and I am deeply impressed by your work in international relations. Would you be willing to offer 15 minutes of your time for a brief informational interview regarding the specific nuances the committee is looking for this year? Case studies show that over 60% of former scholars will respond positively to this request. Why? Because they remember being in your shoes and they want to see their own program succeed by bringing in high-quality candidates. During these 15 minutes, your goal is to ask about the non-obvious criteria. Ask them what the most challenging question was in their interview. Ask them how they structured their follow-on service project. This is the insider trading of the scholarship world. You are getting the test questions before the exam. Often, these mentors will offer to read a draft of your essay. Having a previous winner critique your narrative is the single most effective way to align your application with the committee's current priorities. Now, let us dive into how you use your non-traditional background as a high-value asset. In 2026, the term resilience is a buzzword in every selection committee room. Committees are tired of seeing applicants who have never faced a significant hurdle. They want to know what you will do when you are in a foreign country, the trains are on strike, you have lost your wallet, and you do not speak the language. If you can point to a real-world example of how you managed a family crisis, worked 2 jobs while maintaining your grades, or navigated the complexities of being the first in your family to go to college, you have already proven you possess the grit required for international study. Imagine if Brandon, our Nebraska student, writes his essay about how he manages the logistics of a family farm while commuting an hour to campus every day. He connects this directly to his ability to handle the rigors of an intensive language program in a developing nation. He frames his rural background as a strength, noting that he brings a perspective on agricultural sustainability that a suburban student simply doesn't have. This is how you turn the imposter filter on its head. You aren't competing by trying to be someone else. You are winning by being the most articulate version of yourself. Beyond the alumni, you must also tap into the faculty network. Every university has professors who have served on selection committees. This information is rarely publicized. You need to do a deep dive into the faculty bios in your department. Look for keywords like Fulbright Specialist, National Endowment for the Humanities, or any mention of international fellowships. When you find these professors, visit their office hours. Tell them about your 18-month plan. Professors are often looking for students to mentor for these awards because it reflects well on their department and the university. They can provide you with a level of academic rigor in your application that you cannot achieve on your own. A critical step-by-step detail in this process is the letter of recommendation management. Most students ask for a letter 2 weeks before the deadline. Professionals ask 3 months in advance and provide their recommenders with a comprehensive evidence packet. This packet includes your resume, a draft of your personal statement, a list of the scholarship's core values, and 3 specific bullet points you would like the professor to highlight based on your performance in their class. By doing the heavy lifting for your recommender, you ensure that the letter they write is not a generic template, but a targeted, high-impact endorsement of your branded narrative. Furthermore, we need to talk about the power of the underdog story. In the United States, we love a comeback or a struggle to success narrative. Scholarship committees are no different. If you have a period on your transcript where your grades dip because of a personal or medical issue, do not try to hide it. Use the supplemental statement to explain what happened and, more importantly, what you learned from it. Showing that you can fail, recover, and then excel is a much stronger indicator of future success than a perfect record that has never been tested. In 2026, the ability to pivot and adapt is considered a core competency for global scholars. As you begin to connect with mentors and refine your narrative, you will find that the imposter filter begins to fade. You will realize that the people on these committees are not looking for reasons to reject you, they are looking for a reason to say yes. They have a budget they must spend, and they want to spend it on someone who will make them look good. By positioning yourself as a high-potential, resilient student with a clear plan for community impact, you make the decision easy for them. You are providing them with a success story they can feature in their next annual report. But even with a perfect narrative and a network of mentors, there is a logistical reality that can still ground your flight before it even takes off. It is the complex relationship between your scholarship and the U.S. tax system, specifically how to document your expenses to ensure you keep every dollar possible. Many students find themselves in a high-risk situation with the IRS because they did not understand the difference between qualified and non-qualified educational expenses. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to break down the exact fiscal documentation strategy you need to stay compliant and protect your funding. We will also reveal the specific travel gear and digital tools that successful scholars use to stay safe and productive in environments with limited infrastructure. This is the tactical gear part of the journey that no one tells you about until you are already on the ground. The transition from the academic world of scholarship applications to the logistical world of international living is where the theoretical meets the tactical. In 2026, Being a global scholar is not just about having the intellectual capacity to study in a foreign language. It is about having the operational capacity to maintain your productivity and safety in environments that may not mirror the infrastructure of a typical American college campus. We are going to look at a case study of a student named David, an environmental engineering major from Colorado, who secured a massive grant to conduct field research in the Mekong Delta. David's scholarship was robust, but it did not come with a manual on how to protect his digital assets or his physical health in a humid, remote environment with intermittent electricity. The first pillar of your tactical strategy is the digital fortress. As an American student abroad, especially one funded by federal or high-profile private grants, your data is a high-value target. Historical trends show that students are frequently targets for localized phishing or device theft because they often carry the newest hardware. Imagine if David loses his laptop containing 6 months of unbacked-up research data. His scholarship could be at risk because he can no longer deliver the promised impact report. Step 1 is the implementation of a 3-2-1 backup strategy. 3 copies of your data, on 2 different media types, with 1 copy stored off-site in a secure, encrypted cloud server. Furthermore, David utilized a physical hardware security key for 2-factor authentication. In 2026, relying on SMS-based codes is a high-risk move when you are switching between international SIM cards and eSIMs. Next, we must address the hardware reality. Many students assume they can simply buy an adapter and plug in their American electronics. This is a common point of failure. You must distinguish between a plug adapter and a voltage converter. If David plugs his high-end American laptop into a 220-volt outlet in Southeast Asia, without verifying that the power brick is dual voltage, he risks frying the motherboard. Case studies of successful international travelers emphasize the use of high-quality, PD-rated power banks and multi-country GAN chargers. These devices are more compact, generate less heat, and are designed to handle the fluctuating power grids often found in developing regions or older European infrastructure. Safety in 2026 also involves what we call the analog backup. While we live in a digital world, your survival in a crisis often depends on physical documentation. David carried a laminated emergency card in his wallet and his backpack that contained the local address of the nearest U.S. embassy, his blood type, any medical allergies, and the contact information for his scholarship provider's emergency 24-hour line. He also had physical photocopies of his passport, visa, and insurance policy hidden in a separate location from the originals. This is not paranoia. It is professional-grade risk management. If his bag is stolen, David can walk into a consulate and prove his identity in minutes rather than days. Beyond electronics and documents, there is the matter of personal health and environmental adaptation. Many American students underestimate the impact of different climates on their productivity. If you are moving from a temperate climate to a tropical one, or vice versa, your body requires a strategic acclimation period. David's research in the Mekong Delta required him to understand the nuances of local water safety and insect-borne illnesses. Instead of relying on general advice, he consulted the CDC's Travelers Health website months in advance and integrated the cost of specialized vaccinations into his scholarship budget proposal. By treating health as a line item in his budget, he ensured that his funding covered the $300 in preventative care that ultimately kept him in the field and productive. We also need to discuss the fiscal documentation strategy mentioned previously. In the eyes of the IRS and your scholarship provider, every dollar must be accounted for. Historically, students who do not keep a rigorous ledger of their expenses find themselves in a difficult position when filing their U.S. taxes. In 2026, the distinction between a qualified educational expense, like tuition and required enrollment fees, and a non-qualified expense like room, board, and optional travel, is a critical legal boundary. David used a dedicated mobile application to scan every receipt for books, lab fees, and required equipment. By maintaining a real-time digital archive of these expenses, he was able to prove that a significant portion of his scholarship was used for qualified costs, thereby minimizing his potential tax liability. This level of organization is exactly what high-level donors look for when considering a student for a renewal or a second grant. Now, let us look at the concept of the minimalist mobility kit. One of the greatest mistakes American students make is overpacking. Imagine if David tried to navigate a crowded train station in Hanoi or a cobblestone street in Prague with 2 oversized rolling suitcases. He would be a visible target for theft and would struggle with the physical demands of regional travel. Successful scholars adopt a one-bag philosophy. By using high-quality technical apparel that is moisture-wicking, odor-resistant, and easily washable, David was able to live out of a single 40-liter backpack for an entire semester. This mobility allowed him to accept last-minute invitations to join research teams in neighboring provinces and reduced his checked baggage fees, effectively saving him hundreds of dollars over the course of his trip. This leads us to the hidden power of the local SIM and data strategy. In 2026, relying on your American carrier's international roaming plan is a fiscal disaster. These plans are often capped at slow speeds and come with exorbitant daily fees. Instead, David used an eSIM for immediate connectivity upon landing, and then transitioned to a local physical SIM card within 24 hours. This gave him a local phone number, essential for opening local bank accounts or using regional ride-sharing apps, and saved him approximately $60 per month compared to an American roaming plan. Over a 6-month period, that $360 savings funded an entire week of additional cultural exploration. But tactical gear is about more than just physical items. It is about your mental equipment. We must address the psychological resilience kit. Culture shock is a documented phenomenon with predictable stages: the honeymoon phase, the negotiation phase, the adjustment phase, and the mastery phase. Most students hit the negotiation phase, where everything about the host country feels frustrating or difficult, around the 6-week mark. David's strategy was to establish a routine that mimicked his high-performance habits from home, such as a specific morning exercise or a weekly video call with a mentor. By maintaining these anchors, he was able to navigate the dip in morale that often causes less prepared students to withdraw from their programs early. Your goal as a masterclass student is to arrive on the ground not as a tourist, but as a functioning professional. Every piece of gear you choose, every document you laminate, and every digital backup you create serves a single purpose: to remove friction from your academic mission. The more friction you remove, the more likely you are to achieve the potential outcomes described in your scholarship essay. You are essentially building a mobile office and a personal safety net that allows you to focus entirely on the reason you are there: to learn, to grow, and to represent the United States. As we move toward the final stages of this series, we have covered the 18-month timeline, the administrative traps, the personal branding, and the tactical gear. However, there is one final, high-stakes bridge to cross. It is the transition from being a student abroad to becoming a global professional back in the United States. How do you translate a semester in a foreign country into a high-paying job or a fully funded PhD? There is a specific way to resume map your international experience that most people get wrong. In the next part, we are going to dive into the professional translation phase. We will show you how to turn your stories of missed trains in local markets into evidence of cross-cultural negotiation and global supply chain understanding. We will also reveal the specific organizations that actively recruit former study abroad scholars and how to get your resume directly into their hands. This is where your scholarship investment finally pays its highest dividends. The professional translation phase is the final and most critical transformation in your 18-month journey. Most American students return from a year in Tokyo or a semester in Berlin and describe their experience on their resume with a single passive line: studied abroad in Germany, fall 2025. This is a catastrophic waste of professional leverage. In the high-stakes job market of 2026, recruiters at Fortune 500 companies and federal agencies are not looking for someone who went on a long vacation. They are looking for evidence of what the industry calls global competency. This involves the ability to work in diverse teams, navigate ambiguity, and solve problems in unfamiliar regulatory or cultural environments. To get the maximum return on your scholarship, you must translate your lived experiences into the specific, quantifiable language of the American workforce. Consider the case study of a student named Emily, a marketing major from Florida, who spent a semester in Seoul on a Gilman scholarship. When Emily first drafted her resume, she wrote that she learned about Korean culture and improved her language skills. This is a low-impact description. After a professional translation session, she reframed that experience using the STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. She changed her bullet points to reflect her role as a cultural liaison. She wrote, facilitated cross-cultural communication between U.S. and South Korean student cohorts, resolving 3 major project bottlenecks caused by differing hierarchical communication styles. She quantified her language progress by noting she moved from a novice to an intermediate high level on the ACTFL scale in 4 months. By the time Emily applied for a role at a global tech firm in late 2026, Her study abroad experience wasn't a footnote. It was the primary evidence of her ability to manage international stakeholder expectations. You must perform a deep audit of your time abroad to find these professional gold nuggets. Think back to a moment where things went wrong. Perhaps you were in a group project at a local university and realized that your American style of direct feedback was alienating your peers. How did you adapt? In a professional context, this is called adaptive leadership and cross-cultural negotiation. If you successfully completed a research project using local primary sources, you have demonstrated high-level information synthesis and localized data gathering. If you managed your scholarship stipend across different currencies and high-inflation environments, you have demonstrated global fiscal management. Every challenge you faced on the ground is a potential answer to a common behavioral interview question. Furthermore, we need to talk about the specific organizations that actively hunt for students with your background. In 2026, there is a historical trend of federal agencies like the Department of Commerce and the USAID prioritizing candidates who have received State Department-sponsored scholarships like the Gilman or the Boren. These awards are essentially pre-vetting mechanisms. They signal to an employer that the U.S. government has already invested in you and that you have the resilience to live and work outside of your comfort zone. Many of these scholarships even come with non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, for federal jobs. This is a technical status that allows you to bypass much of the standard, often grueling federal hiring process. If you have NCE and you are not highlighting it at the very top of your resume, you are leaving your most valuable asset on the table. Imagine if Emily, our student from Florida, uses her NCE status to apply for a role as a foreign service officer or a trade specialist. While thousands of other applicants are stuck in the general pool, her application is fast-tracked because she has already proven her value through her scholarship-funded time in Korea. This is how you move from a student to a global professional. You are no longer just looking for a job. You are entering a specific career trajectory that values international experience as a prerequisite, not just a bonus. We must also look at the private sector pipeline. Multinational corporations in sectors like supply chain logistics, renewable energy, and international law are increasingly looking for what they call culturally agile leaders. They need people who can be dropped into a meeting in Singapore one week and a site visit in Brazil the next. To target these roles, you need to use your alumni network again. But this time, you are not looking for scholarship advice. You are looking for career mentorship. Reach out to alumni from your scholarship program who are now working at companies like Google, Boeing, or Pfizer. Ask them how they messaged their study abroad experience during their own hiring process. Historically, these individuals are very willing to provide internal referrals because they want more people with global mindsets in their organizations. Step by step, your professional translation should look like this. First, identify the 5 core competencies that your target industry values. Second, map one specific anecdote from your time abroad to each of those 5 competencies. Third, rewrite your resume using active, result-oriented verbs like spearheaded, negotiated, synthesized, and implemented. Fourth, update your LinkedIn profile with a specific section on your international coursework and the specific scholarship you won. Mention the competitive nature of the award. For example, selected as one of only 500 students nationwide from a pool of 5,000 applicants. This adds immediate prestige to your profile. One of the most powerful tools in your 2026 professional toolkit is the portfolio of global projects. If you did an internship, a volunteer project, or a specific research paper while abroad, do not just mention it, show it. Create a digital portfolio that includes photos of you in the field, a copy of the final report, and any testimonials from local supervisors. This provides concrete proof of your work. In an era where many people exaggerate their skills, having a tangible portfolio sets you apart as a candidate of high integrity and high output. We also need to address the graduate school pivot. If your goal is a PhD or a master's degree, your study abroad scholarship is the ultimate proof of research potential. Admissions committees at top-tier universities look for students who can thrive in challenging academic environments. Your time abroad, especially if it involved an independent research project or a language immersion, makes you a much more attractive candidate for fully funded fellowships. Case studies of students who leveraged their undergraduate Gilman or Boren awards into prestigious graduate fellowships like the Pickering or the Wrangell show a clear historical trend. International experience is the primary differentiator for elite graduate funding. As you begin to see your international experience through this professional lens, the cost of your education starts to look very different. You didn't just spend a few $1,000s on a flight. You invested in a global credential that has a multi-decade shelf life. You are building a brand as a global citizen who is prepared for the complexities of the 21st century. But as we reach the final part of this masterclass, there is one last piece of the puzzle. It is the long-term stewardship of your global identity. How do you ensure that you don't lose your language skills or your international connections as you settle into your first job back home? There is a specific low-effort strategy for maintaining what we call the global edge that keeps your skills sharp and your network active without requiring you to live out of a suitcase permanently. In the final part of this series, we are going to reveal the Global Edge Protocol. We will also summarize the entire 18-month architecture one last time to ensure you have a clear, actionable roadmap from this moment in 2026 to your future as a funded global scholar. This is the moment where everything we have discussed, the timeline, the branding, the tactical gear, and the professional translation, comes together into a single unstoppable strategy for your success. The Global Edge Protocol is the final mechanism designed to prevent the erosion of your international capital. Research into the long-term career trajectories of American students shows a common pitfall: the high-speed return to domestic life. Without a deliberate strategy, the language fluency you fought for in Seoul and the professional networks you built in Berlin can begin to fade within 24 months of your return to the United States. To maintain the competitive advantage your scholarship provided, you must treat your global identity as a living asset that requires consistent, low-effort maintenance. The first component of the Global Edge Protocol is the digital anchor. In 2026, staying connected to your host country does not require expensive travel. It requires the integration of foreign language media into your daily digital consumption. Imagine a student named James who studied in Brazil. Instead of letting his Portuguese stagnate, James adjusted his newsfeed to include major Brazilian outlets like Folha de São Paulo. He listens to Portuguese-language podcasts during his commute and follows key industry leaders in Brazil on professional networks. This ensures that his vocabulary remains current, and his understanding of the regional political and economic climate is always up to date. When a professional opportunity arises that requires a specialist in the Brazilian market, James is not just a person who used to speak the language. He is an active participant in the current discourse. The second component is the strategic alumni engagement. Most students view their scholarship alumni status as a line on a resume, but the real value lies in the ongoing mentorship and networking opportunities. You should commit to attending at least 2 alumni events per year, whether virtually or in person. These gatherings are the primary sites for what we call information arbitrage, learning about upcoming fellowships, high-level job openings, and international policy shifts before they are made public. Historically, individuals who remain active in these circles see a much higher rate of career advancement in global sectors. For instance, a case study of a born alumnus found that by staying active in the Alumni Association, they were able to secure a position at a major international NGO through a referral from a peer they met at a regional networking mixer 3 years after their study abroad ended. Furthermore, we must address the global service loop. Many scholarships, particularly those funded by the U.S. government, have a mission of increasing the global literacy of the entire American public. You can fulfill this mission while simultaneously building your professional brand by becoming a resource for future applicants. Volunteer to speak at your university's study abroad fair, host a webinar for community college students, or write a guest article for an education blog. This not only keeps you connected to the scholarship organization, but also positions you as a thought leader in your field. In 2026, the ability to mentor others and communicate complex international experiences to a domestic audience is a highly sought-after leadership trait. Now, let us synthesize the entire 18-month masterclass architecture into a final actionable roadmap. This is the moment where we look at the complete life cycle of a successful global scholar. We began 18 months ago with the institutional audit, where you looked past the glossy brochures to find the restricted endowments and historical funding trends at your specific university. You moved into the 6-month document gathering phase, building relationships with faculty and perfecting your branded narrative. You navigated the administrative traps of credit equivalency and visa lead times, ensuring that your application was not just academically sound, but logistically bulletproof. You then executed the digital audit and the personal brand strategy, transforming yourself from a student seeking a favor into a professional offering a high-value return on investment. You survived the high-pressure interview stage by utilizing the informed observer framework and demonstrating a diplomatic temperament. Once on the ground, You applied the principles of regional geo-arbitrage and tactical gear management, stretching your stipend and protecting your data in a complex global environment. Finally, you performed the professional translation, mapping your international experiences to the core competencies that recruiters in 2026 value most. To illustrate the culmination of this process, consider the case study of a student named Sophia, a public health major from a mid-sized university in Oregon. In 2024, Sophia was where many of you are today. Ambitious but financially constrained, she followed the 18-month architecture with precision. She targeted a non-traditional location, Vietnam, and secured a Gilman scholarship. During her time in Hanoi, she didn't just attend classes. She conducted a field study on urban water systems, which she documented in a professional portfolio. Upon her return in 2025, she used her non-competitive eligibility status and her refined resume to apply for a role with the CDC's Global Health Initiative. By the spring of 2026, Sophia was not just another college graduate looking for an entry-level job. She was a professional with a verified track record of operating in high-stakes, cross-cultural environments. Her scholarship didn't just pay for her degree. It launched her into a career trajectory that would have taken years to achieve through traditional domestic routes. This is the potential outcome of a strategically managed study abroad experience. It is a fundamental shift in your professional and personal ceiling. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, it is vital to remember that the landscape of international education is constantly evolving. In 2026, the barriers to global study are not as high as they once were, but the requirements for entry are more technical. Success belongs to the students who treat their scholarship search as a professional engineering project rather than a game of chance. You have the tools, the scripts, the frameworks, and the data to build your own bridge to the world. The path forward requires immediate action. The 18-month clock is ticking. Your next step is not to wait, but to walk into your university's study abroad office tomorrow and ask for the restricted fund list we discussed in Part 3. Start building your digital portfolio today. Reach out to one alumni mentor on LinkedIn this week. The cumulative effect of these small strategic moves is what creates the high-impact global career you are aiming for. While this series has focused on the acquisition of funding and the professional mechanics of studying abroad, there is an even deeper level of mastery involving the creation of your own international research projects and the securing of private corporate sponsorships that go beyond traditional scholarships. There is a method for convincing major global corporations to fund your specific international mission in exchange for your unique data and insights. In our upcoming Advanced series, we will break down the exact corporate pitch deck used by students to secure 5-figure private sponsorships and the legal frameworks for setting up your own international nonprofit before you even graduate. We will also explore the emerging world of remote work-compatible study abroad, where students are layering professional salaries on top of their scholarship stipends to achieve total financial independence while traveling. The world is significantly smaller than you think, and your place in it is waiting to be claimed. Stay tuned as we move from the fundamentals of scholarship hunting into the high-stakes world of global entrepreneurship and private institutional backing.